you. But before I get started, I want you guys to listen to a song. And I'm going to stop saying you guys because that's not the appropriate way for me to do this. But you all, maybe I should say, listen to this song as it kind of talks a little bit about where I want to go with this.
Dr. Butler, we're getting notes in the chat that it's hard to hear. I'm wondering if you look up at the top of your screen and you click on, I think it's options, there should be 3 dots and it'll say share your audio.
Oh, okay.
So there's 3 dots that like signify there's more information, and then click on share your audio. And then I think everyone would be able to hear a little better.
All right. Try it again.
We've got on your side. Does anybody hear me? Does anybody hear me? Is anybody listening to what's going on? Before we move on, before we move on, does anybody hear me? Does anybody hear me? Is anybody listening? Listen to the people. How can we change before it's too late? Happy, that's all you ever want to be. Well, knowledge is power. Absorb as much as you need. At times I feel like love passed me by. Just imagine how the kids feel inside. Does anybody hear me? Does anybody hear me? Is anybody listening? Is anybody listening? On before we move on. Does anybody hear me? Does anybody hear me? Is anybody listening? Listening to me? How can we change before it's too late? Before it's too late. Does anybody hear me? You feel you need a friend. Is anybody listening to what's going on? Before we move on. Yeah.
So I apologize a little bit for that mishap. I did not recognize that I needed to have that going as well. The song is a song that came out several years ago, back in the 90s by In Vogue. And it's a cappella that talks about, just understanding what's happening in someone's world other than yourself, right? So if you're going to listen, especially as counselors, you're going to listen. And you're going to take in what others have necessarily shared with you. then it has to be from a space where you have to kind of stop everything that you're doing and just kind of paying attention to what the message is that someone is sharing with you. And so early in my career, when I was an assistant professor in Missouri, I was asked to go and speak to a group of young kids that were in the middle school who were having some racial tensions. And the racial tensions were basically that Black students weren't getting along with white students. And there was a lot of anger for whatever reasons. And when they contacted me and they asked me to come out and speak, I tried to wreck my brain to think about what is it that I could talk about? What could I share with these students to kind of get them to kind of see that maybe they have to step outside of themselves. Maybe they need to kind of look and see what it is that is really going on in the situation and try to find a way that they can communicate together and make some changes in terms of how they see one another. And so as I was doing some research, I came across a poem, Reckless Appetites, that kind of spoke to me. And I put it here for you all to kind of see that a lot of the work that I do, a lot of the things that I put into play really is coming from a place of helping people kind of see themselves and recognize that they're not isolated in this world and that they live amongst other people and that other people can either help them to thrive or they will hinder them, and they could be a person that can hinder someone as well. And so this particular piece talks a little bit about just the fact that once you find out that you can take away some of the selfishness of self and look outside of that and learn to walk in other people's shoes, then perhaps there is a way in which you can start to have some solace and you can start to kind of really bring into the art of living what this poem is talking about, things that are a little bit more perfect, a little bit more gratifying, a little bit more with somebody else in mind in terms of trying to help make changes. And so as a leader, I try to bring those kind of qualities into the work that I do. I try to make sure that I look at what my selfish behaviors are, my implicit biases are, and do different, right? And to try to walk in somebody else's shoes as opposed to recognizing that I live in this place where everybody's supposed to do exactly how I say. And so in my teaching, I only teach to help people open their minds. I don't teach to try to change people's minds. I want people to kind of see it for themselves and gravitate towards whatever changes they might want to make on their own. And so that's the place that I come from. And so I start this presentation off letting you know that whatever I say to you all today is not about trying to change minds, because I know that it's not for me to change. It is for individuals who hear my words and hear words of others and the life stories of others that will help them make those changes. And so in saying that, I just would like to just open the door to you all to know that I'm going to tell you about myself today. Give you a little bit of an insight into me outside of the work that I do as a counselor. And hopefully that gives you a sense of who I am as a human being that caused me to be able to do the work that I'm doing in the profession of counseling. And so starting off, this is a time when I had hair, and I loved having hair. I wish I had it now. I do. I just shave it off now because it doesn't look like that anymore. And this picture kind of symbolizes a time in my life when I just started to really recognize that I just love to travel. And so I got an opportunity at every chance that I could to kind of either travel somewhere in the States or to travel outside of the United States. And so I still have that love, right? And so I'm doing things in South Africa and I'm doing things in other parts of the world, just so that I can see what's going on in the world and not just live by the existence that I have here in Orlando, Florida. I recognize that people have various life stories that are different from mine, different life experiences that really I need to be aware of so that I can recognize my blessings and I can maybe help others achieve what they need to in terms of success. And so that's the start of who I am. So if you all will allow me to just kind of give you a little bit of inkling of my life. You know, it's really interesting doing this online because I don't get a couple of amens or head nods or anything along those lines. So I'm hoping that I'm giving you guys something that makes sense here. So what I would like to do is just give you a sense of who I am. So in the beginning, these two people, my mother and my father, got together and they decided that they wanted to share a life together. And in sharing that life together, they had an opportunity to bring me along. And as you see this picture, this is my mom at work, studio picture, but she is the type of person who would always try to keep me dressed. And so I consider myself to be really well dressed in this particular situation right here. And it's a crushed velvet jacket, if you were wondering. And so it really kind of set the stage for her telling me when I left the house, I needed to be prepared and I needed to be in a state where people recognized that I had maybe something going for myself, right? And so that I carried myself well. And so that was the start of that stage right there through kindergarten on up, making sure that we went out of the house and that we were well behaved and that we took care of ourselves and our siblings and things along those lines. So I actually wasn't the first person born, right? So I have an older sister, and my oldest sister helped me to get into a lot of trouble. And so when I was really young, I would always listen to everything that she said. I would do whatever she told me to do. And so it got me into a little bit of trouble. And so some of that trouble was that I was with her one day outside of a school that was down the street from our house. And she said, "Hey, go and pull that lever." And I didn't know what that was because it was new to me. And so I listened to her because she said to pull the lever. And I thought maybe it was ring a doorbell or something along those lines. And what it ended up being was a fire alarm. And so as soon as I pulled it, of course, the fire alarm went and she said, "Run." So we ran and we ran home. And so in running home, we get into the house, we go in there, and not too long afterwards, there's a knock at the door and a fire truck sitting outside the front of our house with a fireman proceeding to tell my mother that, of course, I pulled or someone pulled the lever, and it seemed to be someone coming from our house because someone across the street from the school saw us and saw us run home. And so those were the types of things that my sister got me into trouble with. And another thing that I used to do is when we were running around the house, I lived in Connecticut, so we had a cellar. And I was chasing her down the hall one day, and I have a nice little mark on my forehead, right at my eyebrow, when her opening the door and me running into it and finding out what pain was and getting stitches in terms of that. So she was the type of person who just kept me in trouble or in pain. And that's what siblings do sometimes, right? And yesterday was Siblings Day, so I still love her, and I let her know that yesterday. We were together for a while, and while we were together, we again got into some types of mischief and things along those lines. But it really turned out that I thought it was just going to be the two of us, and then 6 years later, my younger sister came along. Now, my younger sister and I actually get along very, very well, and I almost feel like I'm her father sometimes because I always get an opportunity to kind of, when I was growing up, take care of her because I was 6 years older than her, I was still in school during the time that she was in school. And when I got my license and things like that, I would be her chauffeur. And so we just always got along. And she follows me everywhere I go. If I go out of the country, she finds a way to get to the same location that I am. And so we just kind of grew up together in regards to that. And so very, very close. So I grew up in a time when I always wondered now what were going through the minds of my parents. Because my parents were growing up in a time when there was still a lot of segregation and a lot of situations where people of color just did not seem to have a place in the United States. And so as every parent, I'm quite sure that they wanted the best for us. They wanted us to be able to have everything that we could have. As I said earlier in the slide, my mother would buy the finest clothes that her budget could afford to make sure that her children were doing well and looked well and things along those lines. And so I always wondered, looking back, what was it that they really wanted for their children? Because I couldn't believe that living through the 60s, the 50s and the 60s, when they couldn't do things that they wanted to do in the United States, that they would want to bring children into that existence, right? Because they had to deal with quite a bit. My mother was born in Connecticut, and my father was born in Anniston, Alabama. And so he knew what growing up in the South was like and what that meant in terms of what he could do and he couldn't do. And I think one of the reasons why he moved north was he felt that there was more freedoms that he can partake in there. And so my parents are deceased now. And so those questions that I have, I don't have the ability to kind of talk to them about because I'm at a different state in my life now and I can think about these things, but I wasn't necessarily there when I was growing up when they were here and they were parenting me in regards to that. So this is what they saw a lot. And that's not something that I experienced, right? So I don't see these signs. We don't see these signs today, but in many cases, these signs are still there, right? So the work that I do in terms of trying to bring people to a realization of social justice and equity for all really stems from the fact that we all want to live in an environment. We all want to have a place where we fit in, where we have the ability to just be ourselves and live the type of lives that we want to live without any encumbrances on someone else's life, right? And so, and how do we get there? Well, in my eyes, we get there from communicating about this and not allowing things like this to kind of fall by the wayside as, oh, that just happened so long ago, but to recognize that because of this, there are still things that are happening for people that do not allow them to move forward in a way that is kind of commensurate with what other people are able to do, right? And so I believe in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that we all as human beings have the same needs and wants, shelter and food and, you know, things along those lines, right? But also I add to that we also want the ability to have the house on the hill with a white picket fence, away from strife and things along those lines. And what has happened is that because of the things that happened when people were not able to own property or to own land or to have their own home, to kind of have things that built up their equity, they weren't able to kind of get these types of things. And so the repercussions of those things are still happening today because the mindset of individuals is not oriented towards the success of those types of things or education or things along those lines. So my role now is to kind of educate and help people, especially young people, understand what it means to kind of take care of yourself and take care of your family and to grow and to educate yourself and to learn how to not allow things like this to kind of interfere with your success. And so helping people recognize that social justice really means that it's equity for all. And so there comes a time when there are people who are dealing with being privileged, right? Now, as a faculty member, I just shared with you all that I am now a full professor, right? And I have my privileges. I have privileges that may be different from people who are Black and brown, who live in experiences that I lived through as well. But I have different things. And so, but it really means that we are have an advantage over others because of privilege. But I also would submit to you that I don't have as many privileges as maybe other people who live in the same environment that I live in. And because of those things, I don't have as many resources, I don't have as many advantages or opportunities to do different things. And so it's important for us to kind of recognize that in order for us to all be able to kind of walk this walk and live in the United States of America or anywhere that we live, is through the fact that we all have a right to be here. And that's a privilege. But some people have what they believe is a privilege over others, and that is where the problems therein lies. So what I'm about is equity and helping people to try to figure it out. How do you be fair to others? How do you be unbiased? How do you make sure that the door is open to all people, right? And implicit bias really does step into play in a lot of things in our lives. And a lot of times we're not aware of it. So I had to check myself, and I check myself pretty often, right? And the reason why I check myself is because I don't want to be that person who is just blind to the fact that that I did something that may have belittled or hurt someone, or was a microaggression towards someone. And the reason why I bring that up is I share with you, maybe it's a metaphor, I don't know exactly how I would classify this, but when I watch a game show on TV, I don't watch them very often, but if I watch a game show on TV and there is a Black contestant on there, I am more prone to root for that Black contestant than I am for anyone else who's on there. And that's something I own, right? And I want them to win, and I'll get upset with them if they say something that's foolish or whatever have you. But for the most part, I am geared towards their success. And sometimes that's at the peril of whoever the other contestants are, right? And so, but I recognized that I did that, and I had to put myself in check. And I was like, you know what? Everybody had a right to have that. If I'm talking about equity and I'm talking about everybody having a fair share at certain things, is it fair for me to root just for that particular person? But that's an implicit bias that I had. And it's a bias that I think a lot of people have. And so like when we talk about hiring practices, or when we talk about anything in regards to someone else getting a leg up, sometimes our minds go to what society has taught us, right? To go towards likeness. And a lot of times we pick the people for jobs and for school and for counselor education programs and things along those lines based on those types of implicit biases. And so it's better for us to kind of recognize that and put ourselves in check when we're in a position to kind of help others along. And so equity becomes a really, really fair thing to kind of consider. And so for me, I try to bring into every dimension of my life, right? To think about it, of course, the gender and other diversity issues, but all the intersectionalities that come into play need to have an equal place at the table. You know, they need to be at the table and figure that out. And so a lot of times people look at something like a term that I coined as privilege equity, and will say, and I attribute it towards white individuals, right? And saying that, oh, they have an advantage and they utilize those advantages. But having advantages does not mean that you cannot share those opportunities with others, right? That you cannot let other people have. And a lot of times people think that because they have the privilege, they have the right to, and no one else has a right to that. And so we have to open the door to the fact that because of our privilege, we need to be able to pull others in and help others to kind of be able to have the same types of things that I have. I should want for others the same things I want for myself, right? I would want people to be able to have a house on the hill, 2.5 children, a car, and things along those lines. But a lot of times people begrudge others of those successes because they feel that them having it takes away from them. And we need to kind of figure that out as individuals. And so part of the work that I do is helping people to kind of look at that in terms of the things that are happening in their own lives. So when I grew up as a kid, that's me, the young person in front of the bride. And that's my Aunt Debbie. And my Aunt Debbie is my mother's second youngest sibling. My mother was one of 17. And so it becomes really important for you to know that my family means a lot to me because I've been around my family a lot. So this is my cousin Joanne. I'm putting an arrow here. I'm hoping you guys can see. I'm going to start from the left. So this is my cousin. Her name is Carolyn, but we call her Beep. And this is next to her in the blue is my cousin Sheila, and we call her Bunny. And this is my Aunt Beverly, and we call her Basher. And she's a little older than my Aunt Debbie. And then next to her is my Uncle Harold. And the woman next to her, I don't know. I can't tell you. It was a friend of my aunt's, and I was a kid. And so I don't know who that is. My Uncle Raymond is next to my aunt. Her husband, who is now my ex-uncle, I guess. I don't know what you do when someone gets divorced, but he is no longer, I guess he's still my uncle, but he's not necessarily married to her any longer. She's moved on from that. And his best man, a friend of hers who I don't know, another friend of his, I guess, who was in the wedding. My Aunt Peaches is next, and she is the youngest of my mother's 17 siblings. And the gentleman next to her, I don't know. The woman next to her, I had a crush on. So I know her name is Nancy, and I don't know where she is today, but I just know that growing up, I always was fascinated with Nancy. The gentleman I don't know. And the reason why I'm showing you all this is that the woman who is on the very right, her name is Loretta. We call her Crummy. And she is a cousin of mine who is about the same age as my aunt who got married. And so that 17-year span, my mother was having children while her children were still having children. And she's pregnant in that picture. And so that just kind of tells you a little bit about my family. And so with my mother being one of 17, I had over 50 cousins just in my first generation of family members. And so we always got together. You heard about Sunday dinners and things along those lines. That was something that was really a part of what my existence was. I was always with my family. We went to church together. We always hung out on Sundays, games. I became a huge Dallas Cowboy fan because of Thanksgiving, and they always played on Thanksgiving. And so we have rivalries with folks, because we were from Connecticut, who were New York fans or New England fans. And so that was part of our existence in terms of sports and things along those lines. So I really enjoyed my time with my family. And so it was really fun. So I didn't just have two parents. I really had a whole lot of parents who were kind of keeping me in check and who I'm accountable to even today, even though I'm not under their thumb any longer, so to speak. So family is really important to me. So in the upper left corner is my Aunt Debbie. And so as you saw in the previous picture, I was shorter than her, but I've outgrown that. And so we are incredibly close still. And so these pictures kind of dissimulate some of my family. And so my father is in the lower right corner with my aunt Corrine, which was one of my mother's sisters. And my sisters are up in the upper right corner with my cousins from my father's side of him. My father was one of 5 children, and so I have cousins also on that side of the family as well. But my 2 sisters flank my 3 cousins that are in the middle. And the picture to the lower left is a picture of just my family at a family reunion and just a group shot that some people were in, that I would show you that another part of our family history is that we get together every 2 years with our family for a gathering just to celebrate ourselves as a family. So this is my senior picture. And I show you this picture for a couple of reasons, right? Just to give you a sense of the kind of nerdy kid I was growing up. My mother still kind of dressed me. And then my senior picture, I wore a white suit with a rust shirt and a rust colored tie. And so I thought that this was the kind of life that I wanted to live. And so this picture I'm showing you only because I wanted to tell you a little bit about my high school experiences, right? And so while I was somewhat popular in high school, I wasn't necessarily the most popular person in high school. But during high school, there was one thing that I wanted, and that was for the superlatives in the yearbook. I wanted one thing. There was only one thing that I thought that my mother was teaching me to be, fashionista or whatever have you. And so I was looking out for me getting the best dress. Wasn't about who's most likely to succeed or any of the other stuff. I wanted best dress for whatever reasons. Well, I didn't get it. It went to Peter Brown. And Peter Brown was a young man who wanted to be a lawyer, and every once in a while he would wear a suit to school, and everybody would be like, why are you wearing a suit to school? And just stuff like that. But Peter, he was a nice guy. He was a friend of mine, but he was not the best dressed. He clearly wasn't the best dressed. And I felt that that was something that was taken from me. And so all these years later, I got a friend request from Peter on Facebook, and I haven't accepted it yet. And I don't know why I haven't accepted it, except for maybe I'm still holding something. And I'm a counselor and I need counseling maybe, but I'm still holding on to that for some reason. So maybe one day I'll accept his friendship, but as of right now, maybe this thing is a little bit too much for me. And so those of you who are aspiring counselors or counselors, you might want to take me on as a client so I can get through this. So discovering who I am. So all those life experiences, all the things I went through in school, all the things I went through with my family, gave me an opportunity to start to look at who I was as an individual, right? And so I started to build on my self-concept and the things that kind of helped me to understand who I was, but also understand who I was in context of my life experiences, my own narrative, along with my family, right? And so I was really, really drawn to understanding that if I was good with who I was, that I can go on and do anything I wanted to do. That was something that my parents instilled in me. They wanted me to feel good. They wanted me to have high self-esteem, but not to a point where I was conceited or I was out there trying to be better than anyone else, but to recognize that if I use my gifts, then I could be successful. And they knew that if I was, in a sense, able to kind of love myself, then I would be able to kind of be successful. And they were looking for my future, right? So when I talked a little bit about why would they bring someone into this world, especially going through some of the things that they've gone through, well, it's very clear because they raised us to recognize that that wasn't going to be my reality. that there had to be a better way that I could live my life, and they were pursuing those avenues to get me there. And so that helped to increase my self-concept. Now, I say all that, but I let you know that I'm really an introvert. When I was in high school, I was very shy. I did not necessarily shy away from being around people and doing stuff, but the sense of it is that I was a pretty shy person and pretty much stayed to myself, which made me really introverted. And today, doing a Myers-Briggs, I am a INTJ. And so while I can do things like this, and I've done keynotes on a larger stage and things along those lines, I know how to find time to go within and be by myself and to kind of get myself back to kind of my level playing field, so to speak. And because it takes a lot out of me to kind of go out and just try to be as extroverted as I can be. And so it's important for me to recognize that I need to have some self-care. I need to take care of who I am in order for me to be able to step away from all the things that would stop me from being successful, right? So one of the things I've learned through my research is that I needed to know who I was. And I needed to understand that in order for me to be able to move and do the things that I wanted to do, to understand other people, to understand other cultures and other ethnicities, I needed to recognize who I was and then recognize how I connect with other people. And that means that I needed to learn to love myself even more. So self-love, so much so that I now want to spread what I do and what I know with others, and not in a place where I'm trying to, again, be better than others, but to recognize that if I love myself, then how can I not love others? How can I not want the best for others? And take it on from that perspective. So earlier on in my career, I was a director of the African American Cultural Center. So I was an interim director and an assistant director during my time at the University of Connecticut. And my role there started me on my multicultural journey. And so working in the African American Cultural Center, my role at a predominantly white school was to provide the university with opportunities to kind of see Black culture from a Black person's perspective, right? And so it wasn't just for the students that were at the school, which was part of my job. So part of my job was to kind of help students who were having issues with financial aid or homesickness or, you know, their study skills and things along those lines. So all that was a part of my job, but it also was about bringing different artists to campus. So I brought folks like Oprah Winfrey and Danny Glover and Gil Noble and different artists who were in the rap scene out of New York, and things along those lines would come. Broadway artists would come, poets. We had Maya Angelou come and be a part of our talk series and things along those lines. And so all these individuals would come and they would educate the campus on Black culture. And I had a hand in that. And so in recognizing that, when I started to become a counselor, all those things started to meld together. And so my previous life as a director of the Cultural Center led into me being a counselor and wanting to do good work and to help others to kind of reach their own potential. And so the multicultural piece, the social justice piece was just really kind of embedded in me. And I really enjoyed having the ability to kind of go that route. That on top of going around the world, having the opportunity to go to Australia, to be in South Africa, to travel throughout Europe and see how other people were living, helped me to recognize that, you know, we're more alike than we're not. And it was really important for me to start to also cultivate that into the work that I was doing, right? I did not want people to think that the only reason why I was looking at multicultural issues was selfish in that I just wanted it to be for me. And if you can make the world better for me, then I'll be okay. But it's better than that. It's more than that. It's really trying to make the world better for everyone, so that everybody has an opportunity to kind of share in the richness of this globe, right? Everybody should have an opportunity to do that. And a lot of times people are not, because of their lot in life. And I used to be a person who would be like, well, why don't they just pull themselves up by their bootstraps? And I started to recognize, especially in my world travels, that it's not like that. People don't necessarily have the means to be able to pull themselves up by their bootstraps because they have not been taught, or they have not been in a situation where they learned how to do things differently, right? So when somebody's in a rut, they're in a rut because they don't know a different way to go about it. And so they continue to do the same things over and over again. They pass that down generation to generation. And so the work that I'm doing is to help people get out of those types of situations, and especially with young people, mentoring young people to recognize that they can get to another level if they were to kind of take on the types of things that will kind of support their efforts. And this is not meaning that everybody has to go off to college. I'm talking about mentoring people to find their own potential or the things that they want in life so that they can kind of be successful and not be in a place where they are only doing things that are allowed for them to do because of somebody else having an upper hand over their situation. So I've gotten to travel to places like Barcelona and India and Dubai and things along those lines. And all these things have been a part of what has made me be the person that I am today. Because I think that if I had been isolated to just be in West Haven, Connecticut all my life, all of the things that I would have missed out on because I did not allow myself to explore and see that it's not just one way everywhere in the world, that there is this life that's out there. When I was in Africa, I realized how to slow down, because it's always here in the United States, it's running. Who can I get? What can I get? More stuff, materialism, things along those lines. And I was that person, right? I had to have the latest things. And I was in Africa and I was just watching people just enjoy their day. People just walking down the street and just didn't seem to have a care in the world. And here I had all these cares, like, how am I going to pay for this trip to Africa? And everybody else just going on about life. And I started to recognize that, that's probably a really good life to live. Why am I stressing myself out to do those types of things? And I'm not saying that we should not try to do best for ourselves, and we shouldn't work and we shouldn't do all these other things, but we need to take care of ourselves in that process. It's really where I'm going with that. And so when I saw other people just taking it slow, I recognized that maybe that is something that I need to do as well. So this is me today. So here I am at the University of Central Florida. I'm a counselor, educator. I am a faculty fellow for inclusive excellence. And that means that I am working on issues of retention and recruitment for faculty across the university, specifically those coming from underrepresented or marginalized communities. And I enjoy that work. And so being a multicultural inspired or social justice advocate as a counselor has led me in my own career at the university to do things outside of the counseling realm, but also within the scope of helping individuals recognize how to work through implicit bias and to bring a university together to, in a place that could be more inclusive and allowing others to find their successes through what we have to offer here. And so I'm loving that part of my job in regards to that. So me today, I'm a member of AMCD through ACA, and I had the luxury of being a part of a committee of people who created the Multicultural Social Justice Counseling Competencies. And the competencies are just what they have been in the past helping counselors to recognize how to work with people who are not like them. The original competencies were set up to support white counselors who were working with clients of color. And so the way that the new competencies come into play is that we're really looking at privileged versus marginalized counselors who at any given time in their career may or may not be in a marginalized or a privileged situation, right? So there are times when I, as a Black male, have privilege in a counseling situation, and there are times as a Black male I don't. And if you think back to that in your own life experiences, you can probably think about those things as well, right? And so when we look at this, when we created this is our conceptual framework that you see on the screen right now, is that we looked at what a counselor's self-awareness was about themselves. What was their awareness about clients and their worldviews? What was those things work together to support how the counseling relationship can kind of come together, because we know we need to build rapport and help clients to kind of be trusting of us as clients, and then to work with them and to work with their communities and to work with just the society as a whole to ensure that people are able to kind of gravitate towards the things that they need and they want. And the actions and the skills are part of what the competencies are all about. It's also about knowledge, and it's also about building up on their skills. The thing that is really important to recognize is that we added the component of action. And the action component is really about social justice. And so the multicultural social justice counseling competencies are really about how we as counselors can go into our communities and work with these clients who need our support, who need our help, and maybe some direction in terms of where to go. So we can be that voice for them, right? So I always say that it's really important for us to recognize that we can't go and try to help someone heal and then send them back into a broken community, right? And so the social justice piece is for us to kind of make sure that we are allowing our clients to go back into systems that will support their growth and their development when we have supported them through their own personal healing and wellness with regards to what they've gotten through counseling services with us. And so I'm also a mentor, and I have a mentoring community where if the upper left corner, there are some gentlemen who are in the 3rd to 5th grade at elementary school here in Orlando area. And with students here at UCF, I have a mentoring program that goes into the community and works with these kids. And the picture, you see them in the orange tie. They go to a school that's colors are orange and blue. And this was a tie ceremony in which we had a rites of passage, or a rites into manhood, so to speak, where these young kids were just initiated into the mentorship program. And we supported that with their fathers that they were around, and other males who were there, and our male mentors, to teach them how to be men, how to be, and more so than men, just to be good people. I say good citizens, and to kind of grow in that regards. And so the mentorship program is really helping them with their schoolwork and helping them to recognize that there are a lot of options out there for them in terms of careers, because a lot of times they are more focused in maybe entertainment or something in sports, and not recognizing that they could be lawyers and doctors and other things along those lines. And so we work towards helping that to happen. So when it comes to social justice, it's important to recognize that if we don't do something, if we sit back and we don't do anything, then there is a space that opens up for bad to happen, for evil things to come through. And this quote really speaks to me, right? I have it as a tagline on my email. And I think about it every time that I'm sending out an email or I'm doing things, because it's just really that all that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to sit around and not do anything. We always sit in a situation where we see things happen. We see an injustice or a microaggression or something that happens, and we don't do or say anything about it. And this person who it has happened to sits there, sometimes isolated, feeling as though there's pressure on them, that the world does not approve of them or doesn't like them, or and then that leads to further problems, right? And the worst of which may be suicide or something along those lines, because we sit back and we allow these individuals to kind of deal with these types of situations alone without anybody who's championing their success and helping them when they can't be a voice for themselves. So how do I suggest that we do this? We have to sacrifice a little bit. I think as counselors, we have to recognize that it's not just about us. Sometimes we have to give up some things, right? Sometimes it's our time. Maybe it's pro bono work, or it's something. It's going into the communities that we don't necessarily go into. So maybe it's missing a show one evening and going in and dealing with the community that we work within and just getting a better lay of the land when it comes to that. So sacrifice comes into play. I think unity is really important. We have to come together as one. This is not a situation where I can do it by myself and others can do it by themselves. We have to be collected and do it in a way where we're putting forward the goodness that could happen from a grassroots point of view when individuals or communities need that type of leadership. And so unity is an important part, I think, of social justice work, because no man is an island. And also, you can burn out really easily when you don't have people around you or surrounding you that are doing the same things that you're doing. Somebody you can pick up the telephone and say, hey, this was happening to me today. Talk me down or talk me up or whatever. But that unity piece is really important. Morality is another piece that I think is important in regards to how people are able to see each other with their values and not put their values on others so much, but to live a moral life in which people have a right to be who they are, right? And not put some judgments on them because of the lifestyle that they live or the things that they have done or past behaviors, right? We have to recognize that, people have gone through their situations because of their life experiences, and nobody should be in a place where they're deemed irredeemable or redeemable, or however that goes. I'm messing up on that word. But the other piece is that we have to belong. We have to work together and want to work within that regards, right? So this coming together and doing things for each other, I think, is a really important piece. Equality. I think that in order for us to recognize our greatness, we have to be equal across the board. Everybody has to have similar opportunities, right, when it comes to being able to do work. And I'm hoping that that is something that we can do as social justice advocates to make sure that we have equal access to things, especially when it comes to schools. Some of our school environments, based on how the tax system is in different counties and communities, we know that the resources that are going to different places are not equal. And so how do we improve upon those things? And then lastly, respect. We need to be able to respect one another. And a lot of times we use the term tolerate. And I think that tolerate is a word that helps people to kind of be in a situation where one person is over another. So I choose to use the term respect. I respect all people. I don't tolerate people. I respect them for who they are, and I don't feel that I have a right to say that I tolerate you. It seems very negative in that perspective. So as social justice advocates, we are kind of positioned to kind of break the chains that bind others, ourselves and others. And how do we go about doing that is doing it because we step out of ourselves and want to do it for the greater good, right? And so my push as a social justice advocate is to help us kind of get to the mindset of trying to make the better decisions that help us help others move in the right direction for them, right? So as a social justice advocate, we could be a citizen where we kind of take on the responsibilities of society and kind of just do it from that perspective. We could be a rebel, where you see some people doing those types of things in how they are able to advocate. We can live a life as a change agent and, you know, work to educate people to kind of look at what these barriers are doing for others and how we can make changes within certain things. Because systemically, there are things that could be changed that could make life better for a lot of individuals. And then we can be a reformer. And that person is just working at trying to look at policies and laws and making those types of changes as well. And I think that they're kind of fluid, right? You can kind of go through all of them. They don't have to be linear where you only do one thing at a time. I think they can always kind of be at a part of our lives where we are taking on the role of any one of these types of characteristics. And so I try to not always be a rebel. I know when to be a rebel. I know when to put that hat on, and I know how to just kind of work it in to a place where you're just helping people see differently and opening their eyes to those types of things. And so figuring out how to best come at people when you want them to kind of see and hear you. Similar to the song I was playing earlier, you want them to be able to hear you with regards to what your message is. And if they're seeing past you or not listening, and just, you know, going through their day-to-day without necessarily giving you the time of day, then the message may get lost. So this is my mother's family. This is my mother, my grandmother, and my grandfather, and her siblings. And I tell you, like I said, they have made me who I am today. And I really love them dearly for what they had to endure in their lifetime to want to bring 50 of us into the world, hoping that we would have the opportunity to have success as well. And so this is my wife, and she and I are raising the next generation. And so I have a stepson, and I also have my daughter. And so the reason behind the push for social justice for me now is my family. And a lot of what I do is for my daughter, Summer Joy. And being a father has put a whole different perspective on what my life has been. So when I think back to why my father brought me into the world and my sisters into the world, I can reflect on that and recognize that, there's something that he was hoping for, that we would be able to be successful. And I can't tell you how much that rings in what I feel for my daughter and my stepson, to be able to have what they need and to have the doors open for them that may have not been open for me, and I know weren't open for my parents. And there's no time like now, because when my daughter was younger, she's 6 now, she was trying to get ahead, climbing ladders and doing things. And I'll throw my wife under the bus on this, but my wife took this picture, and I was like, when I saw the picture, I was like, you didn't go get her? You thought it was okay to just take the picture of this child climbing up a ladder? And so, but the picture symbolizes so much for me. I don't have time to play when it comes to my daughter's success. I have to be there for her and help her anytime that she may fall, or anytime that she may be trying to do something, climbing the stairwell to success, and there be challenges in the way. And I'm trying to help clear those challenges. And I think that we as social justice advocates, we as counselors are in a great location, a great place to be able to make that happen. So it's worth the fight. So when I talk about sacrifice and unity and morality and moralism and equity and equality and respect, I'm doing it with the mindset of my daughter. And I'm doing it because I want people to recognize that as human beings, and I'm telling you from that perspective, we all deserve a right to be able to have success. And it's worth the fight. And that's why I'm a social justice advocate for her and for all the children of the world and for all the people of the world. Because again, I can't begrudge somebody else what they should have because I want it more, or I think I deserve it more. So I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, and my life continues, and I will continue to do the work that I do because I think it's really important. But I can take time out and enjoy different things that I enjoy, but I try to live my life with the mindset that other people have a right to enjoy as well. So whatever my successes are, I should not necessarily begrudge somebody else the opportunity to have their successes. I will end with this poem that I would like you guys to kind of read through, and I will share with you that this poem meant a lot to me during my dissertation process. Anybody who's taken that journey, and I know you all are in school, and some of you may be in master's programs, some of you may be in doctoral programs. But there are times when we have the imposter syndrome. There are times when we don't think we can make it through, and it's like, why did I put myself here? I'm not going to sustain this. I'm going to leave this. And so when I was getting to my dissertation, at the end of my dissertation, when I started to write into like my preface as to what I wanted to share and my thank yous and things along those lines, I came across this poem by Langston Hughes. And it reminded me so much of my journey. The journey that, you know, there were times when people were trying to stop me, or there were mechanisms at play that kind of stopped me. The wall was just rising, and I just couldn't see my way through it, right? And so when it talks about the wall, the shadow, the black wall, during my dissertation, I came, right? And I found people in my life who were sowing into me that I could be successful. My family, who, while they did not have the successes that I've had in terms of education, I am the only person of the 50 who has a PhD in my cousins. And so those things started to help me to get stronger, because they didn't understand why I was in school for so long, but they knew that I was in school, and they still supported that. And so I fought through that. I fought through not being able to make it through, because I wanted to find a way to help others make it and move forward. And so while my cousins are doing various things, and some of them have gotten their masters now and they've gone on, I have second cousins and third cousins now who are rising through the ranks and seeing education as a possibility and getting PhDs and doing other things. And so it's a phenomenal thing. And so the successes, the 1,000 lights of sun that are coming through here are things that I'm able to experience. And so when I share these things, I'm sharing them because I want people to know that, yes, we may have times when we're down, and we may have pressure upon us and stress and things along those lines. But with the right people in your corner, mentors, counselors, social justice advocates, we can move forward and do the right thing and help people to find their successes as well, to find their wellness. And so I want to leave you with a song. This song came into my life about a year or so ago. And it's the type of song that I play when I just need a pick-me-up. And it may not sound that way starting off, but I blast this song in my car. I blast it. And I would invite you all to think about this too, and listen to the words of this song, because I think this song speaks to just some things that we all have to deal with in our life, right? when we don't feel like we belong, or we don't feel that people want us to belong. And this song just speaks volumes to that. And it comes from the soundtrack of The Greatest Showman. And I invite you just to listen. And when you listen to the words. And this, maybe close your eyes and just hear the words of this song and let it empower you.
To the dark, hide away, they say, 'cause we don't want your broken parts. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say, no one will love you as you are. But I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious.
I just want to thank you all for taking the journey with me and allowing me to be a keynote for your second annual conference. I hope that I said something that was meaningful, but I do know that we all have a job to do, and I think that we can do it together. And hoping that you guys are in the fight with me in terms of social justice. And I'm willing to take questions.
I want to say thank you so much just for being here and sharing your story with us and taking the time. I think this was really inspirational.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Dr. Butler,
Yes.
I have a question, but was there someone else that had one?
Go ahead, it's fine.
Okay. All right. A couple of students and I are working on an article about self-care and marginalized communities.
Right.
And part of the reason why we're interested in the article is because we recognize that facilities such as gyms, yoga studios, even healthy food is very hard for clients to obtain. And we as counselors tend to recommend a lot of that when we're trying to get our clients to manage their self-care or to do better with self-care activities. So my question for you is, what do you suggest as counselors we do to change the systemic problem that is within the communities and the lack of opportunities that some marginalized communities, are missing?
It's really interesting. I had this conversation with people yesterday, actually, here on campus. And one of the things that happens a lot of times is that people go in and they want to do good work, but they don't recognize that they have to have ownership from the community. And the community has to have buy-in to what we do and what we bring to the table. Going into these entities is slow work. It's not a easy fix kind of a process, right? In my eyes, and there's various ways that people can go about doing this. But I think that we have to be in the communities. They have to see us. We have to be in churches. We have to be in the schools. We have to be in so many different avenues before we try to get to the work that we want to do or what we project that they need. One of the things that I do when I go to South Africa, right, is like I would go in and I would have this agenda when I first started going, that I would go in and I would bring all this great stuff to people who don't have anything, right? And I found out that they have more than I have in most of those cases, right? And so the piece of the puzzle is that we go in and we know what we learn from the community, what their needs are. We get buy-in, we talk with them. What is it that you want from us? As opposed to, I'm coming in, I'm gonna fix you. I'm gonna fix this. I'm gonna take care of you when it comes to this. Because sometimes we go in with all our fancy ideas and we put the stuff there and then we leave. And there's no mechanism to keep those things that we may even bring in play, because we have not taught or we not have shared with individuals how to sustain those things once we have gone into those communities. And so I think it's really important for us to kind of go and be a part of the lay of the land. I liken that to when I was in elementary school and I go to a school, I go into a store and I see a teacher. And I'd be so surprised, and you probably have seen this or been in that situation yourselves, and you go and you see this teacher, and you're like, oh my God, hi, how you doing? You're in my community, right? Because the only place that I would ever see a teacher was in the school building, or maybe walking to their car, but not in my community, not in my church, not in my stores, not in anything else. And so when you see people who are there and who are invested, and you can start to trust them more, then when you bring those types of things into their community, they're more likely to buy into it than somebody who's just going to be what they think might be a drive-by. And so I would hope that that is something that might be able to help students recognize that there's going to be some buy-in from the community or anything that we might have bring. I see Maya. Maya, you have a question?
No, I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you very much, because this was actually something I have been looking forward to actually when I saw it on there. The empowerment aspect from both as a counselor and into our community, because I come from a biracial family. However, for me, I do not really know where my niche is, being from a biracial family. But one place I belong, one place I don't belong, and just being able to know that you were able to share this, and especially that song. That's why I was glad that my video wasn't up, because it was very emotional. And I just wanted to say thank you for sharing this space with us today.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
Dr. Butler, do you have an email address that
Yes.
may contact you on?
I sure do. SK Butler at UCF.edu, so University of Central Florida.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Butler.
Any other questions? I'm gonna do like I do with my students. I see Tiffany now. Tiffany.
Hey, Dr. Butler.
Yes,
Hi, this is Lori Ann Stretch. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing just well. Congratulations on becoming a full professor.
Thank
And
you.
I really appreciate you being here. I've always admired you as a colleague and a leader in our field. And I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to how students might engage in this work. How can they start being part of the solution?
Wow. How do you get started?
Not
That it's not a calling, right? It's a desire. It's a want. It's something that I think everybody can partake in and do, right? It's just a matter of just getting out of your own way and just doing it, and just getting out there and really putting into action those things that you want. The other thing that you have to do is you have to surround yourself with people who support you and keep you lifted, because this is hard work. Because most people think that you're coming in trying to make them seem like they're a racist or they're this or they're that, when you're only really trying to open their minds to new things and new ways of seeing things, and recognizing that the same things that they want is something that somebody else will want as well. And I think that I've learned from my own challenges, the things that I've gone through in life, the things that I wanted to have happen that somebody wasn't there to support me in. But I do know that you need to have your allies, and you have to have people who can support you through this. That person you can call up on the telephone and say, look, I just went through this. And just to talk you through it sometimes, or to kind of just give you some encouragement to kind of continue on the work that you're doing, because it is daunting when you get doors slammed in your face, or people who don't recognize that you are really looking at their best interests when you're trying to do the work that you're doing. That's why I said before, you have to go, if you're doing work in the communities, you have to be in the communities. You have to be visible. They have to see you. They have to know that you really care, because they won't trust you. And if that's what you want them to trust you, then they're only going to trust you if they feel that they believe in you and in the work that you're doing. And that can help. And I mean, there's so many times that we as counselors send people back into broken systems. The social justice piece is to kind of go out and do better than that, to send them into those broken systems, because that's only going to bring them back to us, either with more pain or in a worse state than they were when they came to us in the first place. And so that would be part of the suggestion. And the other thing is, when I was going to high school, there wasn't this initiative in place to go out and do community service. There was not. But I know that a lot of the younger generation, whether it be the generation, what is it, Z, X, I don't know what it is, Y, millennials, they grew up in a school system type thing where they were able to kind of learn to go out and be altruistic, so to speak, and to give back to their community and things along those lines. So that spirit is already there. It's already a part of who they are. Tapping into that is something, because What are the things that are going to continue to motivate them to kind of move forward and to do those things? But, and also hitching yourself up to a role model or a mentor who's doing this work will also kind of give you the kind of direction. And again, I don't have all the answers. And I don't think any mentor has all the answers, but they can help you with your process, because I think it has to be your answer. It can't be somebody else's answer. You have to want to do this for yourself.
Thank you, Ken.
No problem.
Dr. Butler, we have a question in the chat. It says, Desireen asks, what were some of the challenges that you faced as you took on this work?
Well, if you were to meet me in person, you would know that I'm 6'4" and I'm dark. I don't know if you can see. I'm got and so a lot of times people are like, "Oh, did you play football?" and this and that, right? And so when I first started teaching and started talking with students from a multicultural perspective, what I would hear all the time was, "Wow, you're really intimidating." And then I would sit back and I was like, wow, I'm a counselor. I'm supposed to be compassionate and this and that. And all you see is this and my size, and you tell me I'm intimidating. And so I had to fight through that. So the challenges of getting people to kind of deal with me as a tall African-American male with some size was a hardship for me. And so I had to learn how to communicate with students and stuff like that. I had to bring better humor into, so I think I'm funny. I don't know if I'm funny, but I try to do things to help people feel a little bit more comfortable in my existence. Because I'm not a yeller, I'm not a screamer. And I'm like, you know what? I don't carry stress because I won't allow it to be in my life, right? And so I'm not sitting here trying to bring stress to somebody else. And so I state my case, I state what I want them to hear, and I try to do it in a place like we counselors do, where they can hear it and are able to take it in and maybe do something with it. And so, but I always have to get past somebody else's preconceived notions of who I am because of what they see when I walk through the door. So that would probably be my biggest challenge in terms of doing this type of work, because a lot of times people think you have an ulterior motive. And I'm kind of who I am. I say what I say I want to do. And I really do not want to force somebody to step outside of who they are, but I want them to kind of challenge themselves to why they think the way that they think, why they do the things that they do. Because a lot of these things are cultural or handed down from family relations. And that's why we continue to have people who use prejudice and bias and all these other things against other people, because they don't know. They have not been in existence with people who look different than them to understand that they're just people, they're just human, and that they just need to be treated as such.
Okay, I see Holly has another question. She says, hello from a fellow Central Floridian. What are some of the conferences we shouldn't miss association members?
Some of the conferences they shouldn't miss? Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you, the AMCD is having a summit here in Central Florida, June 21st and 22nd. And that might be a great place to come and do some connecting and networking. And, you know, I think ACA is a great place. ACES is a good spot for those of you who are going the doctoral route. But I think that one of the things I've found is that you don't have to go to conferences that are also counseling related. I went to a conference in Alexandria, Virginia by NADO, and it was more of a race-based type of a conference where people were coming and talking about race relations and things like that. And I think you can pull from those things into your own practice too. to hear what other people are doing around cultural topics. And so those I think, are great ways to kind of also get involved. But the conferences that you go to, sometimes, and I think Dr. Stretch knows this, it's not about the conference a lot of the times. It's about who you connect with when you go to the conferences. So I go to
yeah,
I
absolutely.
go to sessions and I do certain things, but I also gravitate towards the people who are doing the type of work that I do and have the little, sitting down in the lounge or going out being off-site from the conference to allow you to kind of get a sense of what other people are doing. So a lot of the work that we do is not sitting and watching somebody in a conference or a session. And that's not the poo-poo conferences. The conferences are great. You can get a lot of educational value out of them, but a lot of the work that I get, a lot of the times, is with my peers who are doing the same type of work.
Absolutely. Some of the most valuable time I spend at conferences is with my colleagues and the networking and the informal education happening behind the scenes.
Right. And as students, follow your mentors, follow your teachers, go to these conferences and follow them and make them introduce you to people. I told you all earlier, I'm actually pretty shy. I'm pretty to myself, but when I'm at conferences, I know how to change it a little bit. And I know that I have to kind of be out there and a little bit more accessible with regards to that. And so when I shared with you all before that, people are like, oh, you're intimidating. Well, I'm intimidating because most days, this is what I do. I walk around like this. And it's not that I don't want to smile or whatever. It's just that takes a lot of work, just to be walking around 24/7 with a perpetual smile on your face. And so I'm not mad or angry or upset or any of those things. I'm just my regular, what they call the regular bitch face or whatever. And so I have to recognize that, right? But I'm also introverted and I'm quiet. And so I think that hurts the ability for people to kind of challenge that as well, right? Because they're like, is he mean and mad and just don't want to be bothered? It's not that much. It says that all these things come in together, right? I'm quiet and I'm to myself, and I don't walk around with a perpetual smile on my face. And so that's why it's really important to have people connect people with people too, because people recognize that and see that in people and can draw you in. When I was at ACA not too long ago, I got introduced to so many students from other locations through my colleagues. And it's really it's interesting because there are people who come to you and say, I heard of your work, or I always wanted to meet you, or this is that. And I'm like, I don't see myself in that same vein. I'm just like you. And so anybody who wants to walk up to me should not think of that I'm walking around on this pedestal or think I'm on this pedestal. I just had some good opportunities in my life to do some good work, and I will continue to do good work. But just because I do good work doesn't mean that I'm not a good person that you can just hang out with, if that makes any sense.
Well, and Dr. Butler, I would add to that this is a good invitation to students, right, to approach leaders in our field, approach people at conferences, and not be afraid to do that. I mean, for the most part, we're a fairly safe profession,
right.
for the most part.
I think so.
And that you can talk to people and introduce yourself. And, I'm always happy to introduce people to people, but also don't hesitate to take a chance and say, hi, are you Dr. Butler? I heard you speak, at this time.
Right.
I think those risks will make all the difference.
Well, again, when I was a doc student, I used to look at people that I used to research and cite, and I'd be like, oh my God, there's Courtney Lee. Oh, whoa, Thomas Parham. Oh man, Patricia Arredondo. There were people that I would see, and I would be like, oh my God, I can't go talk to them. And now they're some of my best friends and my mentors. And they never felt that they shouldn't be talked to. It was just myself. It was my own idiosyncrasies or whatever that stopped me from doing that. But once I got involved, and that's the other thing, get involved, because that helps too. So just don't go to a conference and go to the session and go back to your room or go visit the city. get involved with some of the stuff that they're going on. As students, you should be involved as they have different task force and different opportunities for students in a whole lot of organizations. And it's not just, I mean, I'm speaking from a multicultural perspective, but there are people who are in marriage and family. There are people who are doing rehabilitation. There are people doing all these different things. And their organizations within ACA are doing good work. And so you can go and be a part of that whole thing too. And that's another network that, you know, for me, I'm in ACES, a CERVIC, CSJ. Here in Florida, I'm a part of the ACES and the Algebraic and the AMCD organizations, just so that I can just learn from those organizations and support them wherever I can. So just getting yourself involved is another great way to start to get to know people within the profession.
Dr. Butler, I want to read Dr. Tiffany Rush Wilson's question. She says that you mentioned how your physical appearance has been a distractor to your core mission of social justice, counseling, and support. Have there been times when those same physical characteristics have been a door opener and encourager for other men to become involved in mental health and counseling initiatives?
I think so. You know, one of the things that is really interesting, right? I didn't recognize how much strength I had in reaching out to other people until I was just honest in my own self, right? And so there were, so I'm not afraid to tell people that I've cried. And you know, I cried yesterday, as a matter of fact. And so the reason why I cried yesterday was because I was listening to a gospel song and it reminded me of my mom, right? And I'm sitting there, my mom's no longer here. And so I'm sitting here listening to this song and I'm thinking about all the stuff that she's taught me in my life. And it was just something that kind of just made me emotional. And I think that I'm willing to share that. And I'm willing to share that with other men and other folks, because I think that we get caught up in this thing that we can't do this or we can't do that, or we have to be a certain something. The other day I was walking out of the store and this gentleman walked by me. And he started off a conversation. It was a white male, and it was, I thought it was going to go left, but it kind of was okay. And he said, "Oh, we're kind of the same size." And so I'm gonna tell you, we weren't the same size. We were about the same height, but he had a belly that was way out here. And so I was looking at him, and I was like, I was a little offended, right? And so I said, okay, let's hold that back, and just talk to this gentleman. But he was reaching out. So there are people who are not afraid to come up to me or talk to me. And so when those types of situations happen, I have to kind of jump on those. Kids don't have a problem with me. I mean, so parents feel better talking to me when their kids kind of make you know, they're looking up, you know, the first time, sometimes parents are horrified or whatever have you. But, you know, the kids are waving or looking up at you. And so you just open the door. Yeah, I'm tall and this and that. Or they'll say, hey, you're really tall. And just having a conversation with them and not treating them like a piece of crap. Their parents say, oh, wow, you didn't treat them like a piece of crap. And then they enter in. And so those are the types of things. And so, so I try my best to talk to the men in my circle anyway about just being their authentic self, and relishing in that, right? Because I have pains, you know. I go through things. I just lost an aunt a couple of weeks ago. One of my mother's sisters, two of my mother's sisters actually in the past couple of weeks, and so I'm not supposed to feel pain from that. These people have been in my life all my life, raising me. And so so I think most of us have these types of issues where somebody who's close to us, and then we're taught to kind of hold it in and don't do anything about it. But that's just something that's going to help us be more mentally incapacitated because we don't take care of ourselves. I don't know if I answered your question, though.
You did, and I appreciate it. So I thank you. I've recently had a situation where I have a lot of young adult men, many men of color in my clinical practice. And it's interesting to just see how many influences and role models they have not had, showing them how to be healthy and
Right.
how to be socially engaged and active and complete people, not just, you know, the sum of their physical appearance. So I appreciate hearing you say that.
And by any stretch of imagination, and that's the other thing I don't do too. By no stretch of the imagination do I have it all together yet. And I don't know that I ever will. I go through stuff. Even as a person who fights for this multiculturalism things, I have to deal with my implicit biases all the time. And so, but I just want to be real about those types of things, right? And I want other folks to kind of recognize that too. I mean, I have issues with stuff. And I see things differently because I'm human too, right? And I was socialized to kind of have these issues, right? I told you all that like one of the things my mother would do in terms of her, us being dressed up and things along those lines wasn't necessarily because she just wanted us to look good, but she also didn't want us to be a threat, right? And so that was my upbringing. So imagine how hard it is for me to walk around and seeing people who are walking around who have the means or whatever have you, and for me, I'm still struggling with folks who want to wear their pants down around their ankles, and all this other stuff. And I want them to be who they are. That's who they say they are. That's okay. But for me, looking at that, I'm looking at it as, well, how can I help them be successful when I know that society is not looking at them in that type of manner? And so how do I support that? How do I push them to kind of be their better selves without taking it on as they are being their better selves? So I had to take back a notch, that I can't put what I see for myself in other people's places, but I can at least let them know how they can kind of move through that and why they may be getting the types of acknowledgments or looks or, you know, things that they're getting from other people who don't understand why they're going through that.
That would be a great conversation to continue. In fact, I just looked you up on Twitter. I'd love to talk about the balance of real life and safety and respectability politics and that intersection between them all. So I really appreciate.
Yeah. Well, I think there's another. Thank you. And I look me up. I'm not a real big Twitterer, but I will. I do. I'll try to do it that way. But it's probably better for you to email me.
I'll email you.
How do you work through those biases as a professional counselor and leader? Well, I can't tell people to go to counseling without going to counseling myself. And again, I have a bunch of folks who I have in my corner. There are a bunch of counselor educators of color who are my support system in working through some of these things, right? Because sometimes you just have to talk yourself down, right? You have to, you say, this just happened to me. And you have to figure out whether or not, okay, am I going to be the rebel, or am I going to be the person who's going to take this and try to peacefully come to a situation, a conclusion to the situation. So, yeah, I'm a big proponent on finding your allies and utilizing their services. I have great mentors. All through my whole process of coming to where I am today, I've had mentors. I know that I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors, and I relish that, and the mentors who have kind of carried me through. And so when, you know, I think about the success I had, like today, I tell you, I got this letter saying that I finally made full. I didn't do it alone. And those people who supported me through that whole effort, you know, I think back to my mother and my father, who are probably, hopefully, looking down on me, proud that, you know, that this has happened for me, when they didn't even halfway understand all the time that I was doing all of this to get there in the first place, right? They stood behind me, they supported that, and they just knew that education was something that was important for me in terms of getting these different degrees. And so, so all those things helped me to kind of work through these biases and stuff like that. Because again, my number one person that I do this for now It's not myself, it's my daughter. And I truly am trying to make this place a better place for her. And I'm going to continue to do that. And we're over time. So I want to thank you all for allowing me to be a part of your day. And hopefully I've said some things or I shared some things that are very helpful in your walk. But I do know that it's your walk and you have a lot to offer. We can't do it isolated or alone, and reach out and touch all the people who are in your life and help convince them in some way that they need to be helping to make changes as well. So I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Butler.
Thank you again.
Oh, no problem. No worries.
Thank you.
For those of you that may not have seen, Dr. Butler, Jennifer had left Dr. Butler's email address in the chat. You can go in there and get that if you have other questions or comments for Dr. Butler. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr.
You all
Butler.
have a blessed day.
Thank you, Dr.
Take
You
care.
too.